Some parents are taking their children out of traditional schools and unschooling them. What is unschooling and why is it so controversial? There's an article that I recently found on the topic of unschooling, and this is actually the first time I've heard of unschooling. Apparently, it is a trend as noted by Rolling Stone. Unschooling is the parenting trend that's pissing everybody off. No math, no social studies, kids set the curriculum. Is this trend in education helping or harming our kids? So this was an article that was published, let's see here. It looks like back in June this year. But the article that I came across that introduced me to this was this article here that's titled "Unschooling Parents Put Their Kids in Charge of Their Own Educations. Are They Actually Learning?" Let's see what this article actually says. This summer, a TikTok video of a mother showing off her son's literacy skills went viral. "Not comparing myself to other moms," said the social media influencer Onami, producing a notebook belonging to her 6-year-old son Rainer, filled with crudely scrawled words in crayon. "Look at this. Lamp, egg, jar, lion. This is him doing this by himself." Onami, who goes by a single name, is one of many parents, increasingly visible on social media, more unassuming offline, practicing a radical form of home teaching dubbed unschooling, also known as free schooling or self-directed learning. It is an informal educational approach in which the direction is dictated by a child's interest. Now, wow, if you were a teacher watching this, you're thinking to yourself, student-centered learning, child-centered learning. What can be so bad about unschooling? Well, let's keep reading. It eschews curricula, testing, standardized or otherwise, homework, recess, other pupils, and all the other hallmarks of conventional education. True believers regard it as a corrective to a flagging public school system which leaves so many children behind. Critics, meanwhile, say that it's little more than a form of educational neglect and abuse. Now, before we keep going, I will say that, I can understand some of the ideas behind unschooling because actually a lot of the research points towards child-centered learning, which basically is, basing curriculum around what the child's interests are. And it's a again, there's a lot of research behind that. So a lot of teachers and schools are trying to do their best to implement certain practices such as student choice, giving to allow students to have ownership over their education. Actually, recently we have a new rubric in Louisiana that is basically there's a learning progression that says that students need to take ownership of their learning, and that's just the idea of child-centered learning. So there is nothing wrong with that. As a matter of fact, it is a great thing. But where an initial red flag for me is taking students out of where it says here in the article that you're removing curricula, homework, recess, and other pupils. Now, in addition to child-centered learning, we also know that students learn best when in connection with others. So we're taking that element out, and we are having child-centered learning with this whole unschooling trend. So just something to think about. But let's continue on here to see what Miss Onami has to say. And you can see here on the left side, this is her kid's journal, this little notebook that he's got. And this is her over here. Presumably, I'm assuming this is from one of her TikTok videos. And that's another thing, is that, this seems as much a TikTok trend or social media trend as it is an education trend, which that's another red flag for me. I'm not huge into TikTok or anything, but there's a lot of trends on TikTok that aren't necessarily the best, I guess you could say. So if you're getting your education from TikTok, you might want to rethink that. But anyways, so here is what it says. As an unschooling parent, Onami centers observation in her approach. She notes that while her son is more interested in hands-on learning in the form of building and construction, her daughter showed an interest in reading and writing by age 3. When her son showed an interest in cooking, she began asking questions of him and herself. What is it about the process they love? Is it the problem solve it? Is it messing things up? From this, I've noted his love of measuring, from which has come a love of math. She describes this approach, which values play and self-discovery, as very Montessori, which is true. But unlike a traditional Montessori school, Onami refuses anything resembling a traditional classroom. Her children's education is demonstrably more robust and outdoorsy. Blah, blah, blah. This and that. So why is this article such a big deal? Well, critics, anytime you put yourself out there on social media, the TikTok experts as well as the actual experts are going to weigh in on what you're putting out there. And a lot of people are saying that this is not education. It is a form of abuse and neglect. Is it? What are your thoughts on this? I would love to hear your comments down in the comment section below. But either way, I'm going to give just a few thoughts on this in addition to what I've already told you about child-centered learning. Well, child-centered learning is great. But as I also said, the idea of taking children and not allowing them to work with other students, you're taking away the community aspect of education, which researchers have shown and say that there's a lot of benefit to. It enhances student motivation and things like that. But I'm going to talk about two main points here. And the first one is the hidden curriculum of traditional schools and the importance of it. And then also the idea of college and career readiness. So, first of all, now the mother here in this Onami, she says that she wants to remove anything resembling curricula. She doesn't necessarily have curricula. All right. And what some parents may not understand is that there are two kinds of curricula in schools. There is the planned curricula, the formal curricula, which are the materials and all of the resources that teachers use to teach students. But then there's also the unplanned curriculum, which is also referred to as the hidden curriculum. And that hidden curriculum, those are all the things that students learn that are outside of just math, science, reading, language arts. In schools, children learn lots of things such as routine. Okay? For most people, once they graduate, they have to get a job, or even when they're still in school, get a job, and they have certain routines that they have to follow. They have certain procedures that they have to follow. They have certain, there's a chain of command. You look up to authority. You learn a lot of things in school that are not actually part of the planned curriculum. They are part of an unplanned curriculum. So what I would say is that in this case, if you're unschooling children, you're taking them out, they are not just missing out on the content areas. They are also missing out on a lot of unplanned lessons, in the moment lessons that you can only learn in the presence of your peers, of other adults, in the school system. So there is a lot that these students will miss out on, or that students in general who are taken out of schools miss out on. And granted, there are some benefits to teaching children at home. And I have friends, for example, that homeschool. They don't say that they unschool, but they homeschool. And I see their side of that. I understand why they choose to homeschool. The public school system is not perfect. So homeschooling, teaching your children at home is nothing new. But this idea of unschooling and just breaking completely free and not having any kind of curriculum or anything that resembles school is a little alarming. Like I said, homeschooling, I get it. As a matter of fact, I have an article pulled up here that is, it's titled Chicago Teachers Union Don't Tell Parents Their Students' Pronouns. Okay. It says the Chicago Teachers Union's leaders want teachers to keep parents in the dark if their child asks to go by a different name or pronouns in school. The school district is okay with that. This is hugely controversial, and I'm not going to weigh in on this in particular, but I can understand some parents' frustration at the school system and not agreeing with some of the things that go on. So homeschooling, if you choose to homeschool your kids, great. And the friends that I have that do homeschool their kids, they still have a curriculum. They buy resources. They still have their students take assessments and things like that to make sure that they are learning on or above grade level. So they have a progression throughout their education. But unschooling seems to be nothing of the sort. It's just a complete departure. And ultimately, going back to my point, students are missing out on a lot of the unplanned or hidden curriculum. So that's the first thing. The second thing is college and career readiness. So we have to look long term for the how our decisions and how education is going to affect children in the long term. And that's fine if you want to unschool, if you want to take your kids out of the school system and try something different. But there are repercussions to this, because just because you believe in what you're doing and you see some alternate education pathway doesn't mean it's necessarily going to work out. Colleges require certain things. They require students and those applying to be able to do certain things. And if you do not have that goal in mind for your kids, then you're setting them up for failure. Because when it comes time to apply to college and you don't know how to write an essay, you taught your kids how to write poetry, but you didn't teach them how to write a formal argument or just a formal statement, something like that. It can be detrimental to their success. So the school system, and as much as people want to argue over the Common Core state standards and things like that, that is set up to try and help students be ready for what is coming down the road. And it's set up so that students are ready for college or ready for a career. And unschooling and taking them away from the norm doesn't seem to it seems like you're not really thinking long term. I can understand wanting to maybe supplement your child's education by doing some of those types of activities that are described in this article during the summer, or maybe after school or on weekends, giving them a chance to explore other things. But it should be, in my opinion, a supplement rather than the main curricula. She says she doesn't have a curricula, but she has the whatever she is teaching is the curriculum. This sense of freedom and all of this other stuff. Now, there's one last thing that I want to look at in this article, because it kind of says a lot of what I have been saying. And just to recap, I talked about the hidden curriculum, how students miss out on a lot of lessons. And then I also talked about college and career readiness. And so in this article, there are actually some stories from some other people that talked about their experiences with their education. And let's take a look here. So this is School of Hard Knocks. It says Caitlin Davis, 36, was pulled out of school in southern Ontario, Canada when she was in first grade. Her parents were evangelical Christians who took their children out of school after their eldest daughter passed away from leukemia. Initially, Caitlin's mother made a run at something like conventional homeschooling, setting up lesson plans, assigning schoolwork, even having an ad hoc classroom in the family basement. Before long, any semblance of normal schooling fell apart. When her mother returned to work, Caitlin and her younger sister were left more or less to their own devices, mostly spending time fiddling around on the family computer. In 1999, when she would have been in the 6th grade, Caitlin heard the news of the massacre at Columbine High School in Colorado. It stirred in her a strange feeling, not sadness or horror, but something closer to longing. I would have rather gone to school with the threat of a school shooter, she recalls bitterly. I would have rather been injured. That's how bad it was. I think homeschooling, unschooling, whatever you want to call it, is absolute child abuse. And so she actually goes on to talk about how I'll read this for you. It says, beyond the total dearth of formal education, which put Davis well behind her peers, she says she suffered most acutely from not really having any peers. Friendships were hard to come by. When she did connect with other children and their teenagers, she found herself woefully out of step. She watched lots of movies and spent her days and nights surfing the internet, largely unsupervised. Her understanding of the high school experience was shaped entirely by pop culture. To this day, I'll ask people if stuff like school pictures or school dances really happen. She recalls, is that actually a thing? It's crazy. And it goes on to say, in her adult life, Davis has settled into something like normally. She sees a therapist. Okay, so this is one perspective, but this is her experience not having a traditional school. Again, she says that she started in homeschool, but kind of ended up unassumingly or unintentionally in a situation that where she wasn't really having any kind of school at all, and it could be considered unschooling in a way, left to her own devices. And I think that this is a fear that some of the critics have, that, you're taking your kids out of the school system without a plan and you're saying you're going to let them direct their learning. But really, how much thought are you putting into that? Are you really going to be there watching your kids and guiding them in the learning process? And, do you even have any skills, any teaching skills at all? Because, teachers are actually trained to teach. Just someone who is a parent who has no experience, your kids are not going to get the same benefits as working with a teacher who is trained to do so and to scaffold and to the instructional strategies and different things that go along with teaching. So yeah, this is it's a very interesting article, this whole idea of unschooling. And hopefully, this is just my feeling, hopefully this is just a trend that passes with time. And yes, I do believe that it is exactly that. Just another one of those TikTok trends, parents trying out something new and whatnot. But as I said throughout this video, students are missing out on the hidden curriculum, the unplanned curriculum, the things that you learn in school that are outside of just the core materials. As a matter of fact, going back to the late 1800s, I believe, is when, one of the main goals of school was to socialize. And if you ask a lot of teachers, they will tell you that the purpose of education is to make it so that kids can live and be productive citizens in society. And that is deeply rooted within the education system. But if you're taking them out of the education system, those kids are not learning to be productive members of society, and they're going to struggle much later on in life when they actually get into the real world and are around other people and have expectations and have routines and things like that that they have to follow. And also, the second thing that I talked about was college and career readiness. And the school system right now is the curriculum is a progression that helps children learn the skills they need to be able to function, to be able to get a job, or to be able to go to college, one or the other, or both. And taking and unschooling kids doesn't seem to be helpful in that regard. It doesn't seem like the best way to help your kids be successful when it comes time for them to live in the real world. So those are my thoughts on this article, this whole unschooling thing that is going on. We'll see what is said about this as time goes on. But in any case, thank you for watching the video. What do you think about unschooling? Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Have you tried it? Do you know someone else? Do you know someone who has tried it? Leave your comments down below. Let me know. Make sure you like the video. Make sure you also subscribe to the channel so you can keep up with all the informational and educational videos I will be posting. And until next time, for a brighter future, Classroom Camp.